Again, the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord, now that Ehud was dead. So the Lord sold them into the hands of Jabin, king of Canaan, who reigned in Hazor. Sisera, the commander of his army, was based in Harosheth Hagarin. Because he had 900 chariots fitted with iron and had cruelly oppressed the Israelites for 20 years, they cried to the Lord for help. Now Deborah, a prophet, the wife of Lapidoth, was leading Israel at that time. She held court under the palm of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim, and the Israelites went up to her to have their disputes settled. She sent for Barak, son of Abinam, from Kadesh in Naphtali, and said to him, "The Lord, the God of Israel, commands you, go, take with you 10,000 men of Naphtali and Zebulun, and lead them up to Mount Tabor. I will lead Sisera, the commander of Jabin's army, with his chariots and his troops to the Kishon River, and give him into your hands." This is from the book of Judges. That was actually Judges 4, 1-7. The book of Judges is a unique book because in our culture, when you say a judge, and there are 11 judges named in the book of Judges, you think of somebody in a black robe sitting behind a high bench. And in the case of Deborah, I keep thinking of, I just watched her last night. Judy, Judge Judy. I can see Deborah as Judge Judy. But I got to tell you, not all these judges fit that category. In the book of Judges, what categorizes being a judge is not listening to the disputes of the people. No, it's lifting the oppression on the Israelites from outside forces and freeing them. The judges, as they are called, are filled with the Spirit of the Lord, and they go forth and they destroy the enemies. It mentions one judge here, Ehud. Now, Ehud was an interesting judge. He was left-handed. And you say, so he was left-handed. That's not a problem. Well, at that point, they were being oppressed by a foreign country. And Ehud, because he was left-handed, you must understand that if you're right-handed, which I didn't know, tell you the truth, if you're right-handed, you keep your sword on your left side. If you're left-handed, you keep your sword on your right side. So Ehud came to this palace, and he told them that he had a special message for the king, and he had to talk to him by himself, all by himself. Nobody else could be in the room. It was a really secret message. So they sort of, pumped him on, the side to see if he had any weapons, and they figured he was right-handed. Therefore, they checked the left side. You know what he had on the other side, a two-bladed knife. So he went in and they shut the door. And he told the king, "I have a message from the Lord," and he stood up and he stabbed him. Now, we might consider him an assassin, but the truth of the matter is he was a judge, because with that death, he called up the armies, and they swept out the enemies, and they had peace and tranquility for, I think, 40 years. That's what a judge did. They freed the people. And if you remember Samson, I'm sorry, I would never go to Samson to get a dispute settled. He was kind of, all over the place. But he is a true judge because he brought down the walls of the temple and destroyed the enemies and freed his people. Therefore, he is a judge. There are 11 stories in here. And as you read through them, you're going to see some really strange things. I like the book of Judges because I feel that it shows the power of God working in his people, through his people, to sustain them. Now, the bottom line is, Judges happened after the death of Joshua, Moses, etc., etc. Those major leaders were no longer there. And you know what happens when people get settled? They sort of, bright, shiny thing, let me follow that. Oh, I like that bright, shiny thing, let me follow that. Okay, they sort of walked away from the Lord. And the Lord got angry with them, and that's what set up this situation with Deborah, is that he sent down a Canaanite king to oppress them. Now, I must tell you that the story is in chapter 4, but it's also in chapter 5. Chapter 4 is the prose, they just wrote sentences, but chapter 5 is a poem, and it was supposedly sung by Deborah and Barak. And looking at the commentaries, they say it was about when it happened. This is what happened. This is how the people who were involved in it saw it happen. The prose is a little bit more clear-cut, they don't add a lot of things there. But the most important thing is, when you start in the first part, it says that Deborah was a prophetess. She spoke the words of the Lord. And she judged the people. She sat under a tree, and she judged the people. Now, think about that. The people must have really trusted her. If they would bring their disputes to her and expect her to give them a just hearing and a just sentence. And they came to her, and they held her in that esteem because they saw her as being a just person who would listen, had no prejudice, and would make decisions. So she had a lot of power in that way. Now, it also says that she was the wife of somebody whose name I can't pronounce. Anyway, when you're looking at it, if you ever do a foreign language and you're looking in the dictionary where you take this word and you look it up in another language, sometimes they have different words that you can use. So instead of being the wife of someone, they said that can also be translated as fiery woman or spirited human. Think about it. Fiery, spirited. This was Deborah. We're opening this story. They're being oppressed. The people have turned to the Lord because everything else has failed. You must realize that they are living in the hill country. You people live out here in the cove. You gotta live in the hills sometimes. It's kind of rough to make a living in the hills. My father when he went to housekeeping, he went behind down in Sugar Camp, up in those shale hills, which I live on one, and he called it a whippoorwill farm because he said the only thing you could raise on that farm was whippoorwills because the soil was so bad. But that's where the children of Israel were. They were being pushed up into the hills. They were these fertile plains, but they weren't allowed in down there. They weren't allowed to farm them. That's where the Canaanites were. So when they're saying they're oppressing them, what they're saying is they're forcing them up into the mountains and making their life hard. It mentions that Sisera has 900 chariots of iron. Number one, if you look at a chariot, you would consider that an early tank. And you say, a tank? Yeah, it's a platform. You could put 2 or 3 soldiers on there, plus the driver, and they're going down. And I'm telling you, if you're standing on the plane and you're looking up and there's a horse coming at you with a chariot, you don't stand your ground because you get run over. So they were very efficient on the plane, just like a tank is efficient on the plane. Nice, smooth ground. They can run. They can do formations, etc. Not good in the hill country, though. Not good in the hill country. And they had iron pieces to them. What did the Israelites have to fight with? I looked it up. What do? I Googled it. I found a commentary, and what it said was, the Israelites were reduced to whatever they could find around their house, around their home. If they were farmers, they might have a sickle. I don't know if they had pitchforks in those days. They would have knives. But the problem was they didn't have iron. Iron was hard metal. If they had any metal, it might be bronze or brass. And when you take bronze or brass up against iron, iron is much, much harder. So they had really nothing to fight with. The Canaanites were very careful about making sure that the Israelites never learned about iron. No, you can't, how do you make that? No, go away. No, that was a secret. Because that was their weapon. That was their strategic weapon to oppress them with. And as long as they had iron and the Israelites didn't, they knew they would always win. And the Israelites knew they'd always win. Or as my husband would put it, it's like taking a knife to a gunfight. There was no winning on this. So when they said they had 900 chariots of iron, they're saying, hey, there's no way we can win. No way, no way. But Deborah got the word from the Lord. And she called to Barak and she said, you gather up 10,000 men, you take them up to Mount Tabor. And the Lord will deliver your enemy into your hands. Now, this isn't part of what was read this morning, but I must tell you this. Barak looked at Deborah, and his words to her was, I'm not going up that mountain unless you go up that mountain. She said, all right, I'll go up the mountain. So they went up the mountain. Why? Well, remember, she has a lot of prestige. She has a lot of confidence. And that confidence would go to the troops. Hey, 10,000 troops going up the mountain. They're looking at that enemy and they said, I got this sickle in my hand. And they've got those chariots with horses and iron tools. And And they weren't trained soldiers. They just pulled them out of the fields and said, hey, we're going to go fight. They had no training. He says, Deborah, you must come with us because you're a prophetess. You are a speaker of the Lord. And also, the people have so much respect for you and confidence in you. If you go up, we'll all follow you. And that's what they did. Now, Sisera heard about this, and he brought his 900 chariots, and he got close to the river Kadesh, and he was down there. And actually, what she said was, up, for this is the day on which the Lord has given Sisera into your hand. The Lord is indeed going out before you. What happened? Well, it isn't too clear in the prose, but if you read the poem, you'll find out there was a violent rainstorm. And there was this thing called a flash flood. Do you know what a flash flood does to a ground? Those chariots suddenly were mired in mud, and they weren't moving anywhere. There was disarray. And actually what those 10,000 Israelites did was a mopping up exercise. That was it. Because the Lord had gone before them and conquered their enemies. And you're saying, well, that's nice. What's that mean to me? When you're looking in the lectionary, which is scriptures that they gather together that they think would be appropriate for a specific Sunday, they do a Old Testament, they do a psalm, they do a letter, they do a gospel scriptures. And the gospel scriptures was Matthew 25, 14 to 30. Now, that scripture is concerning the man who was going on a journey, and he called his 3 servants, and he gave to one 5 talents, he gave to one 2 talents, and he gave to one 1 talent, and he left. And when he came back, he wanted an accounting of his money. Well, the one he'd given 5 to, he had doubled it to 10. And he says, oh, enter into the joy of your master. You're good. The one he'd given 2 had doubled it to 4. Oh, enter into the joy of your master. You've done a good job. The one he gave 1, he took that talent and he buried it to keep it safe. He hid it away. And he says, here's your talent back. He says, you worthless servant. Even if you'd have put it in the bank, you'd have got 0.1% interest on it. So get out of here. I took the talent from him. What does that have to do with Deborah? Deborah, at the beginning of the scripture, has 2 talents. She's a prophetess. She speaks the word of the Lord. And she is also a judge. She has the esteem and the recognition of the people. But what happens after that? She has to take on another role. She literally has to lead those soldiers up the mountain because Barak says, unless you go, I'm not. But with her presence, the soldiers followed him up the mountain. And more to the point, she's the one who gave the command to attack. Up! The Lord has given our enemies into our hands. Let's go. I think she was a fiery woman. She expanded her talents. What does that mean to you? You all have talents. And music, your speech, you can do this, arts. Your talents are unimaginable. But do you use them all? Do you go into other areas to expand what you do know? They know what they say as you grow older, and you all are growing older. You should learn something new every day. That'll keep you young. If you learn something new every day, you'll stay young. Expand your talents. Step out of your comfort zone. Out in the vestibule, we have these poor sign-up sheets. Look at them. Think about it. Put your name down on some of them. This church, in order to function as a church, needs people who are willing to step up and take a role in the church. John's Way, the food pantry, they all need help. That is all serving the Lord. Serving here in the church is serving the Lord. Look at Deborah. She went from sitting under a tree, listening to people's problems like, this goat got in my garden and ate all my radishes. What are you going to do about it? She went from that to leading 10,000 men down a mountain to conquer the enemy. She took the power of the Lord into her life, and she expanded her talents. You all have talents. Don't be afraid to use them. There are many opportunities. Don't be afraid to utilize them. You don't want to get to heaven and have God say, so what'd you do? Well, let's say, No. You want him to say, enter into the joy of your master. You have done well. That is what he wants. So when you look at those empty spaces out there, don't be afraid. Step out in faith. The Lord will go with you.